Hello, all you wonderful people. Always great to have you with me as we take a look at what the powers that ought not to be are up to this week. But before we get started, please let me tell you how you can help support this channel and make all the difference. Simply go to patreon.com, find my site by name, which is Neil Oliver, and sign up. And for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you get early access to all my new content, plus exclusive weekly access to, amongst other things, a question and answer session where I answer anything you like. Nothing's off the table. The details are down there somewhere. Okay, it's that time again for a monologue. Magic tricks rely on misdirection. For misdirection to work, it has to be unspoken, subtle. It has to work without anyone noticing it working. The audience looks the wrong way without being told to. It looks the wrong way, is distracted long enough for the magician to pull off the trick, because that audience is offered something more interesting to look at than the working of the trick itself. That's what misdirection is all about. But magic is fragile and ephemeral stuff. The moment the audience learns to look in what is, for the magician, the wrong place, the inconvenient place that reveals the working of the trick, then it's over. No more magic tricks. Don't get me wrong, it might be satisfying to see through the trick, to see how it's done, but it's also sad. It means the end of something that has been enjoyable, thrilling. The mechanics of the trick are, by definition, everyday. Ordinary. Being fooled, on the other hand, in the manner of a trusting child is, well, it's magical. Which brings me to the point of what I want to say, which is that none of us can afford to be trusting children for the whole of our lives. When I became a man, I put away childish things, remember? People get frustrated with me all the time. They listen to me pointing things out, and then they say, yes, okay, we see it, but now what? What are we supposed to do? Or better yet, some ask, what are you going to do about it? Meaning me. My answer is that knowing is the most important thing. Everything comes from knowing. When it comes to misdirection, having the audience look the wrong way, you have to give them something that is, by definition, eye-catching, distracting. Really and effectively distracting. What I'm saying is, you can't just tell people where to look, and even more importantly, where not to look. You absolutely 100% cannot say, don't look at that. Nothing is more certain to have the audience look than being explicitly and angrily told not to look. It's a year since one Matthew Crooks shot at Donald Trump while he was on stage at an election rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, winging him in the ear. Easy to forget to mention, incidentally, that a man was also killed by another shot fired that day. Who could forget Trump, though? Briefly dropping to the stage, then as quickly getting upright, moments later, bloodied but unbowed, crying, "Fight, fight, fight," as the Secret Service detail bundled him away. In the aftermath, Trump was able to claim divine intervention. Quote, "I was saved by God to make America great again," he said. When you think about it, though, a year later, and we still know very little about what happened. I had to look up the name of the shooter. Unlike Lee Harvey Oswald, I hadn't retained the name Matthew Crooks. Trump himself has said simply that he prefers not to think about it all. And it would appear that that way of thinking has descended over the rest of us. I listened to podcaster Candace Owens this week, wondering about it all. She showed a pic of Crooks in the moments before he started shooting. He was clearly on his mobile phone. Candace wondered who he might have been talking to. She suggested it might be revealing for us to know who Crooks was in contact with just before he attempted to assassinate Donald Trump. But we don't know that. It's likely we never will. As an audience, we are just not looking at Matthew Crooks. The image of a bloodied and unbowed Donald Trump is so much more compelling. Podcaster Joe Rogan called the footage of Trump shouting, "Fight, fight, fight," while blood ran down his face, the most American effing thing he'd ever seen in his life. So we don't look at Matthew Crooks. There's so much we don't really look at. We don't really look anymore, or with great interest, at the vast piles of our cash still being spent on the war in Ukraine. War in Ukraine is just one of those constants in life. It just goes on. European countries, or rather the so-called leaders of European countries, talk about being on a war footing. There's talk of conscription. You could say the way the talk of what happened that day in Butler, Pennsylvania has gone away has been quite subtle. I don't like to think about that is understandable in many ways. Except, of course, that we're talking here about an attempt to kill a US presidential candidate, an act that would have been world-changing had it succeeded, was arguably world-changing anyway, because it so narrowly failed. But put that aside and consider the Epstein files. Consider how long we were invited to demand to see what we were told were vast heaps of information about Epstein and his clients. Consider how we were invited to wonder about that private jet, that private island, how Epstein went from school teacher in the 70s to living in the largest residential property in New York City, with connections to all those billionaires and powerful people in what seemed like every walk of life. Consider all that, and then wonder, perhaps, about how now that Trump and his team are in power, we're being told there's nothing at all to see, that there never was. Attorney General Pam Bondi, Director and Deputy Director of the FBI, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, all on the same page, an apparently blank page, a page with no names at all. And then Donald Trump himself, in response to the latest question about Epstein, asking, "Are you still talking about this guy, this creep?" I say again, when it comes to directing and misdirecting the audience, rule number one is don't tell the audience to their faces where they shouldn't be looking. Are you still talking about that guy? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. You can't, in the business of magic tricks and misdirection, be so lazy and so filled with hubris as to simply tell your audience what not to look at. You have to do so much better. Misdirection only works by definition when you don't draw attention to the act of misdirection. Have we reached the point with the powerful where they simply can't be bothered with subtlety anymore? Is the hubris at such a pitch now that they think they can just tell us to stop seeing? I said near the top of this that it was important just to know. It's important, the most important thing all on its own, because knowing is not the same as believing. Believing is the stuff of magic tricks. Perhaps the biggest thing of all that too few people are looking at now is the gargantuan Ponzi scheme that is the economies of the West, our currencies, the whole lot of it. Too few people are looking, misdirected as they are by magicians. William Shakespeare said all the world's a stage, and he was right. Furthermore, he pointed out that everyone on the stage is an actor with appointed entrances and exits. Actually, he didn't say actors, he said players, which is perhaps more useful. Players, playing a game. I mentioned the line from the Bible, from Corinthians in fact, about becoming grown-ups and putting away childish things. It's time to stop believing and to start knowing. The magic trick of the Ponzi scheme pushed by the bankers is credit. Everything is based on credit, which is about the money they are literally allowed by our governments to create out of thin air, out of nothing. The word credit comes from Latin and it means belief. The Ponzi scheme, the lie that all the other lies are built on, from which we are distracted by actors, players on the stage, by magicians and their misdirection, requires our not knowing and just believing instead. With every day that passes, I become more certain that we are simply watching actors on stage. We're watching nothing real. To me, the Epstein story is going to prove in time to be absolutely crucial. It's going to make all the difference in the end. That sound you heard is not a rifle shot, the fabled shot that was heard around the world. No, what you heard was the sound of the camel's back snapping under its load. It's all there now. All you need, all we need in order to stop believing and to know instead, to know the truth. I'm telling you, as the bard said, all the world's a stage. He was trying to tell us something important there. What we're looking at isn't real, maybe never was real. At the end of the day, a magician is just a guy in a tuxedo with a pigeon up his sleeve. For just how long will you allow yourself to be distracted by smoke and mirrors?